Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. French President Emmanuel Macron concluded a state visit to Japan, signing agreements with Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi on defense, nuclear energy, rare earths, and space, while calling for a ceasefire in the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. Now, Macron highlighted the need to secure the Strait of Hormuz, which remains effectively closed due to the conflict in the Middle East. Now, the French president will travel to South Korea on Thursday for further strategic economic talks. And joining us now to analyze the implications is Denis Kolesnyk, president of the MENA Research Center. Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
Hello, thank you.
With this visit, let's begin with Japan. I mean, that is concluded now. Macron's on his way to South Korea. Now, one of the things I listed there was the ceasefire that both of these leaders have agreed to. But nevertheless, what kind of realistic tools, how much influence can both of these, let's say, efforts have on the United States and Israel for a ceasefire?
First of all, we have to understand that France has a permanent seat at the UN Security Council, and Japan also relies pretty heavily on the oil coming from the Middle East. And therefore, the interest of the ceasefire in this US-Israel on one side and Iran on another side conflict is quite important, especially in Tokyo, but also in Europe. Therefore, the looking for cooperation and looking for expanding the like-minded partners, it is important for France. And I guess there is this idea of somehow maybe a third way diplomacy that is not necessarily aligned on everything with the United States and is not obviously aligned with the Chinese ambitions. So the countries of the Asian countries as well as European countries and including France have to find like-minded partners and try to develop the frameworks of cooperation and maybe a common pressure on the international platform, for example, calling on ceasefire and peace. But the problem is that the tools are quite limited, both for Japan and France, due to the obvious reasons. It is the United States and Israel who decided to intervene into Iran, and basically those countries are controlling what is happening right now.
You said the actual influence is limited, but the reliance, especially for Japan and South Korea, the reliance on the Strait of Hormuz, for instance, and all the oil that comes through is very, very much indeed important. Let's also talk about the other elements of this trip. For you, that meeting, I mean, we saw some of those images just now. We mentioned AI, we mentioned nuclear energy. But for you, what was the main takeaway from that visit that Macron just completed in Japan?
In my opinion, two key issues there. One is about the Japanese investment into the southern France and in the development of rare earth minerals, because mostly every country in the world depend somehow on China with regard to rare earth minerals, and it is important for France to diversify its resources. And the second issue, in my opinion, is the signing of some kind of a roadmap between the French and Japanese ministries of defense, bolstering the cooperation in the military sphere, increasing the joint exercises and exchange of personnel, of experience, etc. So in my opinion, it's somehow both economic and military cooperation that we are seeing right now that will be bolstered between the two states, and those are, in my opinion, the key takeaways from that visit.
All right. Another one I want to follow up on, because
most concrete.
Yes, thank you. One thing I want to follow up on as well is the Japanese Prime Minister, Takaichi. Now, she has enjoyed a very close relationship with Donald Trump. Now, I'm just curious to get your sense, standing next to Macron, someone who himself has been recently criticized by Donald Trump, also about him mentioning, Macron saying, predictability of Europe versus the unpredictability of the United States. How much of that is going to filter through and have an impact maybe on NATO relations? Maybe will Trump listen to Takaichi in some way? Is she one of those Trump whisperers in all this?
You know, what we were observing from Trump over the past few years is that he's he's projecting the unpredictability, and it's for him and for his country. It's a good way to deal, because when your partners and your foes cannot predict you, it is an advantage for you. But at the same time, when it comes to close partners, it is difficult, because when, for example, in France, we cannot necessarily rely on the United States, and we cannot understand what will be the US next move, or how would the US administration would behave in this or that situation. It is difficult for us to work on our foreign policy and security and defense policies. So it creates this problem, and I guess the same problems Japan faces the same problems, because Japan is from time to time the North Korea launches a missile in the direction of Japan. So the region, there is also Chinese appetites in the region. So it's also, from the security and defense standpoint, it's quite complicated, and therefore I guess both Japanese and French are trying to find ways on how to to speak in the same voice and to rely more on each other, because the United States are indeed today are unpredictable.
Mm-hmm. On that, let's stay on security and defense for a moment, is what you said, that same voice. That's interesting. Let's go back to NATO for a second. I mean, the comments of President Donald Trump in the last couple of days have really shocked a lot of NATO allies, where he effectively says he wants to leave the alliance. What is, in your mind, the French reaction to all this? We talked about predictability versus unpredictability. How do you think that's going to play out, and how the French react to all this?
Yet again, it also goes in line with the White House approach. Is the unpredictability is creating this uncertainty and predictability, and we don't really know what will follow. After the Trump's comments about possibility of withdrawal from NATO. But the French reaction was quite limited, I would say, and there was the words such as "we are surprised" by the Trump's declarations. But we also have to remember that the US invasions, for example, the US 2003 invasion of Iraq, France didn't follow on this. And also back at that time, France was kind of backlashed in the United States. There was this anti-French even campaign. Today, it's more or less the same. We refuse to provide our airspace to the US fighter jets and to provide our bases for them, and this created this criticism from the United States. But at the same time, we don't want to be part of this U.S., Israel, and Iran war.
Mm-hmm. And also, just as to we're kind of unfortunately used to these threats from Donald Trump, and he says one thing, does another. But generally, the most recent one, calling NATO a paper tiger, as I said, moving away from NATO, is the fear or the concern. I mean, that's quite palpable here in Poland and the eastern flank because of the proximity to Russia. Is that fear the same in France, or is this seen differently?
Definitely, if there is a potential withdrawal of the United States from NATO, it would weaken pretty much this organization. But at the same time, we have to remember that, for example, today Trump is criticizing NATO, but some years ago, Emmanuel Macron was criticizing NATO and calling it a brain dead. So back then, we criticized Emmanuel Macron for his lack of vision. But today, we understand that in the times of this unpredictability, and with our key ally is behaving this way, so NATO is indeed quite weakened by this kind of behavior from the United States. Meanwhile, what's important to say is that NATO wasn't designed to follow the United States on its military invasions in different parts of the world. NATO is a defensive alliance, and it is meant to preserve and guarantee security in the North Atlantic space, not in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. And just another quick one. I mean, there's also a trip now to South Korea. Macron is on his way there. Also with South Korea and Japan heavily reliant on what comes to the Strait of Hormuz. There were talks of Trump also wanting these countries to be involved in opening it. Do you see any kind of, let's say, movements in this direction with Macron also visiting there? Will that be discussed, do you think?
Yet again, was what I have said. The Emmanuel Macron is trying to find diversify alliance and to find like-minded partners in other parts of the world, and it's very important. And for the obvious reasons, the security reasons, for example, given the Chinese ambitions in the Asian region and the unpredictability as well of North Korea, it is important for South Korea and Japan to get also more partnerships and more cooperation with the Western states. And newly elected president of South Korea has published an op-ed in, if I'm not mistaken, Le Monde or Le Figaro, actually calling on the creation of the establishment of strategic partnership between France and South Korea. And I guess this will be debated between the two leaders together with other domains of cooperation, such as artificial intelligence. And we know that France is trying to pioneer artificial intelligence in Europe.
Mm-hmm. One quick line on before we finish, just a quick one. Oil is still rising. There's price caps in South Korea, also in Poland. How is that being felt in France?
You know, it's a difficult question because it depends from whom we are talking. If we are talking from the most, let's say, defavorized parts of population, so obviously even the increase of a few cents of fuel is quite felt. But if you're talking about the general population, as of today, I didn't see any, I would say, strong reactions about the possibility of the increased fuel prices.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us the latest there from Macron's trip to Japan and South Korea. Thank you so much. Denis Kolesnyk there, president of the MENA Research Center.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.